I have in my hand here a TV wall mounting bracket. Basically it's a low profile unit and it can support TVs from 32 inches all the way up to 65 inches. Now the key things to realise with it is that it can support TVs of weights up to 75 kgs. And the distance that this bracket will be out from the wall is 25 millimeters, so basically about 1 inch. And the VESA standard it can support is all the way up to VESA 400, and that's why it can support such a large range of TVs. VESA standards is basically, and I'll demonstrate it later in this video, it's basically the whole distances preset on the back of the TV for taking in the screws and bolts for mounting it onto a bracket. So what I'm going to do is we just have a representation of how this should look pre-assembled here, or fully assembled here. And if we just look here, we have a bracket that mounts onto the wall. That'll be bolted in at the 4 corner points normally, held into the wall. And what we have then is we have 2 brackets that screw onto the back of the TV, and we simply drop them into position and use a locking mechanism to lock them in, hold them securely onto the wall. So I'm just going to move this out of the way, and I'll just cover the main events here on it. So the first thing to mention is just an instruction manual here, along with it giving a list of all the nuts and bolts, etc., which we should have, right? Just move that out of the way again. And we'll move on then. We have a total of 4 plugs and 4 screws along with washers, and we'd use that for mounting the bracket directly onto the wall. So if we just imagine we held this bracket up, we'd mark it in the position that we want to mount the television. We'd mark 4 holes, normally in the corners here, put it down, drill the holes, insert the plugs, and use the screws and washers then to bolt it onto the wall, right? The next thing in our process would be, we have a range of screws, or bolts here, a small, a medium and a large, and depending on the size of the television we use, they'll have different VESA standards that we'll be using to bolt onto, okay? So what we have here is the smaller TVs, obviously here, up to the very largest, up to the 65 inch. And there's washers, of course, to go with them as well. So if we could imagine the situation where we come along and we mount this bracket onto a wall, if we mount it on like this, what we'd do then is we would have this bracket, which I'll hold in front of us here, and you can see there's little grooves on it. What we'd do is we'd bolt this onto the back of the TV, which I'll demonstrate quite shortly, and we'll just put this on here, we'll slide it down, and we're able to lock this in. And we'd use the screw that's on the base here, I don't know if you can see it here, but this screw, we'd use a Phillips screwdriver to lock this up, and it'll just mean that this will be pushed up tightly to the actual bracket itself. And what it means then is, if somebody came along and put a sidebar pressure onto the TV, it wouldn't be able to slide off simply because it'll be pushing right up against this side bracket here, if you can see it, okay? So they'd lock it into position very, very well from that perspective. So we'd obviously do this on both sides, and just to show you the locking mechanism in more detail, here it is. So how would we actually mount these brackets directly onto the TV itself, okay? Well, I'm just going to move up the TV that we have here. This is actually a 39-inch TV, and it's using a thing called VESA 200. So it just means the hole spacings on the back of this particular TV are 200 millimeters apart. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to grab this ruler, I'm going to move along, and we're going to hold this up here, and if we see here, from center to center, this is 200 millimeters, and again here, 200, 200. So that would be called a VESA 200 by 200. And if we came to mount this, we just check our bolt sizes here. What size bolt? This is slightly too large, so it probably means the middle size bolt here would be the ideal one, and we can just screw it in here. So what we would do is, we know that this is the top part, this is the bottom part, so we could come along here, and what we could make a decision is, we'll just get a washer, which I'm not going to do here, but a washer, screw this in here and screw it on. So now we have the brackets on the back of the TV, and we'll come along with the brackets and drop it onto the wall mounted bracket. I'll just demonstrate it earlier, and then we just use this here to lock it into position, and that's it fully assembled. So it's a very, very neat and clever design. It's a pretty low cost unit, and still it can support very large TVs, things like that. As part of a wider range of TVs we have, sometimes people want a low profile TV bracket like this. Simply have a TV, just want it in on the wall, out of the way, and a simple bracket like this will work very well. Other people want cantilever ones where they can spin it out and adjust tilt angle, all the rest of it here. So it's just horses for courses really. But this anyway is an overview of the low profile TV wall bracket which supports TVs from 32 all the way up to 65 inches.